Let's move to our number 2 here. Joe, you have Steve Sarkisian as your number 2, and so do I as when we go down these rankings. Joe, I do think that Sark, for what it's worth, is the second best head coach in the SEC. I don't think that anybody around the country can justify not putting him at 2 if you did a conference by conference list. They've been in the Final Four the last 2 years. Now, here's the thing. Here's the issue that I think and the problems that people will have. Had a pretty light schedule in the SEC this year, right? I mean, it's not like that they went through the gauntlet that Georgia did. The tough games that they had, they lost. That is a fact. The tough games that they played outside of Clemson and outside of Arizona State, they lost. Two of those games were against Georgia, but the third one, Ohio State, you still lost. The question becomes, yes, he got to the Final Four twice. Is it graded on a scale at all? But there's nobody else to overtake him in the SEC. I still think he deserves to be number 2. I think that there's some context that's got to be thrown into this too.
I think it's fair to bring up the questions that you're bringing up, but where I stand with him is where he's taking Texas. Like I'm not a fan of when we do these lists just to really only look at how things were and how they've been up until this point. Like we have to expand further and go, okay, what's the direction of this? None of these guys are retiring tomorrow. There is no Nick Saban in the circumstance that is going to decide that he's stepping down tomorrow unless something crazy happens. Sark took what was a shit show of a Texas program to the point where, I mean, we play the sound every single time we come back from commercial. They were a mess. They were a recruiting mess, inconsistent on the field. They were not, all the 5 stars that they were bringing in weren't developing. They were going through coach after coach, Charlie Strong and Tom Herman. There was no success there. For Sark to have turned this around, and this is where it sounds like you've kind of come around this. You and I used to yell about this. I used to defend Sark saying for what he has been able to transform this team into is a proven sign that he is taking this thing to that next level.
In fairness, when we were having those conversations, he had never won 10 games before ever.
Yes.
And they were 8-5.
My defense for him when he went 8-5 after a rough first season, and even after the first rough season, was it takes a lot to try and reshape your roster. One of the things that we heard from that first season is that there was nonsense going on the team bus and in the locker rooms, that nobody was locked in. There was the damn stripper monkey shit that happened. There's just so much craziness that was happening that first year, and to lock in and to recruit at the level that he has to return Texas to a top 2 team in recruiting every single year is an amazing accomplishment. And then the last part, 38-17 at Texas in the span, 2 college football playoff appearances, and he also has 2 college football playoff wins. That is some of the best performances out of any of the SEC coaches not named Kirby.
I got a high take. I agree. So listen, he's at my number 2. I want to make it very well known before I get obliterated by anybody at Texas. Okay. He is at my number 2. I gotta ask some questions though. Look, man, the second best team that you played in the SEC arguably might have been Vandy. Maybe A&M, maybe. And you struggled there. Joe, let me just, outside of Georgia, who were the teams that, and he played a really bad Alabama team early in the year. My real question would have been, what would have Texas looked like if they played the Alabama team at the end of the year? I don't think they win. I'm being dead honest. We're a play away from Alabama dethroning Michigan in the Rose Bowl. That team got better as the year went. It was Nick's worst team. I mean, it was by far Nick's worst team. They're a play away with Jalen Milroe. Remember the zone read, bad snap by McLaughlin. I mean, they're there. Joe, they had the weakest strength of schedule in the SEC, right? That is my question is, what happens if they go through more of a gauntlet in the conference?
Okay. But one, you are somebody on this show that points out that the difficulty of the conference is still better than all of the other conferences. Okay. So one, that's important to bring
this season.
At face value, playing the middle to back end teams in the SEC, you have said that they are far more challenging than playing the middle or the back end of the Big Ten or any of these other conferences. So
Well,
I'm not trying to throw that in your face, but like it's still a difficult schedule.
Well,
You have to
hold on
win
now.
your games. You have to win your games.
Well, hold on now. They weren't impressive in all of this either. They played. I told you all last season. You can't. No one can ignore this. I will die on this hill if I have to. Literally, they played up and down to the level of their opponent every week. Every single week they did. They
still won all the way through though. So playing up and down to your opponent, they still won. I think that comment is not wrong, but that comment is something that we save for in the season when we're trying to project what's going to happen. Okay, so like when we're trying to say like, okay, when they play Georgia,
they played Florida without TJ Lagway. They didn't play South Carolina. They did not play Ole Miss. They did not play LSU. They played Georgia and they lost twice. So if I'm just going to be honest, you face none of the big boys. And let's just be real. You face none of the big boys outside of Georgia. By the way, that was Georgia's worst team that we've seen in 4 years. It's not a debate. Okay, that is
okay. But I mean, that statement in a vacuum is correct. But like the last 4 years, the other teams were insanely like some of the best that we've ever seen.
Okay, but you didn't face anybody in the top 5 either. You didn't face Tennessee.
It's a fair remark, but I mean, like, are we gonna sit here and check every single one of these coaches' resumes?
Yes, because here's the problem. If I look at Josh Heupel, if I look at Lane Kiffin, if I look at Brian Kelly, and if I look at Kirby, who are their losses to? What is the situation and scenario behind it?
Well, my argument would be, though, that yes, despite playing easy teams, Texas's only losses in their first year in the SEC were to the best team that went on to win the conference. They didn't fall victim to, I think, what a lot of people's expectations were, that they were going to lose a stupid game during the regular season. They didn't do that.
They didn't play anybody other than A&M in the top 7. That's the point that I'm trying to make here. Like, again,
I understand that there's still left to be proved, but I don't think that takes away from how strong of a first year in the conference they had.
Let me ask you this question. If they go through South Carolina's schedule, hypothetically, just stay with me, and they have to go through the month that Georgia did, where they're playing 4 out of their 5 opponents of ranked opponents, I think they're going to slip up. If that team that played Vandy goes on the road and has to play a ranked opponent, I think they lose. That's the point that I'm trying to make. He's still at my – you cannot ignore the accomplishment of getting back to the Final Four and back-to-back years. Okay. No one can do it, myself included. I feel like I have an issue with, like, hey, man, I get it, but I feel like there's got to be a Barry Bonds asterisk on it. Maybe that's a better way of putting it. But
I would make the argument, though, that like a team like Tennessee this year also had a really easy schedule. It's not like he's the only coach in the conference that had an easy schedule. And Tennessee lost a stupid game that they weren't supposed to.
Name another.
Arkansas. Another team that – well, no, wait. Let's be more direct with this. We need to pick teams that had easy schedules that were at the top of the conference.
Yep.
There's not a lot of them, but Tennessee's the next comparable one.
They played Georgia and Bama.
And Texas played Texas A&M and
your
Georgia.
Second best opponent's an 8-4 team.
Texas A&M was not far off from the quality of the Bama team this year. Like it's like a hair below. It's a step below. It's definitely below, but it's not like it's awful.
Let me ask you. I'll put it like this: Alabama's a little bit of a. I think if the scenarios are the same, and that team plays Vandy or plays Ole Miss on the road instead of Vandy, they're losing.
Wait, say it one more time.
If when they're going through injury concerns and injury issues, and they're going on the road to Nashville, if they're not going to Nashville and instead they're going to Oxford, that D-line's going to eat them up. They're going through offensive line issues. They're going through running back issues. I think that it's different in the SEC for some of these, or even the Big Ten. Joe, they go on the road to Oxford, they're going to lose. All I'm saying is, for this one, I just don't know how much I can grade this now. I mean, he played a ranked opponent in Georgia and lost.
I think that you're you're nitpicking a little bit too much. And it's kind of funny to see that you still have him at 2.
Well, yeah, because
I'm surprised you actually didn't put Brian Kelly at 3. I'm like the listening to the way that you're talking about him, I'm actually very surprised.
If I gotta be honest with you, because I didn't want to get listed as a homer, I did put BK at 3, and I think it's justified. But here's the problem that I have with this at the current moment. BK's got an SEC appearance just like Sark does. He's got more wins. He's got fewer losses. The only difference is that one guy's got 2 Final Four appearances in back-to-back years. Everybody talks shit about Brian Kelly, which we both have at number 3 for what it's worth. Joey's got more wins than him. He's got more wins than him in the last 4 years. And don't, before you tell me that Texas, before I hear the argument that Texas was in a worse spot, I'm sorry to anybody. I covered that team for a living. They had 39 scholarship players.
Yeah,
I don't want to hear that shit.
Wait. But Blake, Texas was far longer removed from winning a national title than LSU was.
How does that winning the Joe Burrow 2019 to having 39 scholarship players, it's still a complete
general recruiting cachet, and the ability to recruit is much easier coming off of a national title a couple of years ago.
I'm sorry, that got ended through going 2 years the way that they did, it was ended. They had 39 players.
But you and I both know that there is an importance in a significant gap in national championships in recruiting. There is a significant impact.
Joe, all those kids left.
I know that I'm not saying that those kids, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that Brian Kelly steps in and he is able to recruit at a high level because he's taking a program that just won a national championship. They
just won a national championship, but okay.
Okay, 2 years removed from winning a national championship. The mess that Texas was equally as bad as what LSU was in terms of what you're talking about, where there being a drop off in the talent of the quality of the rosters. So, like, I don't think that there's
if it's equal, and one guy has more wins and the same amount of SEC title appearances, then what?
He's going to have more overall wins because Brian Kelly has been a head coach for longer. They've both been head coaches for 4 years. Both of them. In the SEC specifically.
But, okay. Brian, let's just be real for just a minute.
Wait.
Brian Kelly, the 1 year would be the Notre Dame. His first year of these wins would be at Notre Dame.
You're saying the last 4 years, Brian Kelly has more wins than Sark does.
Yeah, in the last 4 years, Brian Kelly is 40-12. Okay, Sark is 38-17.
Because Sark's first year was 4 years ago.
Correct? Yeah, and here's correct. Well, at Texas, right? Like at Texas is when he started. But here's another thing that I could throw in there. Okay, I really was not trying to anticipate this debate starting. Joe, we're talking about 12 straight seasons, or 12 out of the last 13 seasons where BK has 10-win seasons. Like, you can be mad at him or say this or that about him because he doesn't get over the hump. That's fine. But I think that when we're talking about 2 and 3, 3 and 4, 4 and 5, yeah, you got to be nitpicky.
Well, I mean, and the nitpickiness is the fact that Brian Kelly checks the box of being good enough to be at the 3rd spot because he has so many career wins. He's got 2 college football playoff appearances. He's got a national championship appearance. But the difference is it took Sark less time to take Texas to multiple college football playoff appearances, 2 Final Four appearances, and then also to accumulate 2 college football playoff wins. This could get completely changed in one season. Like, if Brian Kelly goes on a run and they go to a national championship, it changes in one season. But, like, let's forget, you're right. I'm not going to do the whole Brian Kelly can't win big games thing because I've yelled about that with you all the time. He has one good big win in the last 5 years that I think is, like, legitimately notable, which is the game where they beat Alabama 2 years ago in his first season. That is his best win.
What is Sark's?
When he beat Alabama on the road. So they both have an equal big win in the last couple of years, and Sark has gotten further. And this is me not trying to shit on Brian Kelly. It's just me trying to point out here, that's the separation point. The point that you brought up at the very beginning of this comparison conversation is Sark has actually gotten all the way through. He has gotten through and moved through the playoff in one playoff game.
I put him at 2 and Brian Kelly at 3. But I
Okay.
got to be real with you. Again, there also comes – I will leave it at this. There also comes a part where one coach this season, for what it's worth, four of their six opponents at the end of the year were ranked. Texas played 4 all year. I mean, hold on. Take Brian Kelly out of the scenario. Take Sark out of the scenario. Dog, some of this shit's not created equally, and even in their own conference. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but LSU's losses this year were to opponents that they shouldn't have lost to.
I don't disagree.
Okay.
I don't disagree with that at all. I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Okay. I don't think the
outside
quality
of Alabama, outside of Bama, I don't agree. Other ones I would not agree to, or I would agree to.
When you're playing in the same conference, some teams obviously will have harder schedules, but when you have that many more wins than the other team this year, Texas was the better team. I
would be very intrigued to see I'm going to be very intrigued, and not this year, but the next, when it flips, and they got to go on the road to Baton Rouge. Then the following week they got to go on the road to Bama. Then I do think you start getting your real conversations, because here's another thing about Texas too. We said it during the playoff. Joe, they got a favorable matchup. They did obviously
get 2 of the best matchups that they were given, but the game that they played against Ohio State was reflective of the fact that they had deserved to have gotten that far, and that our eyes had deceived us a little bit because they played so tight. Now, they couldn't finish because of Quinn Ewers, and we have complained about Quinn Ewers plenty, but they got to the 1-inch line, quite literally. They got to the 1-yard line. They almost tied the game up. They almost went to a national title.
Anything you want to add on Brian Kelly? Because we kind of basically
no, that was why I kind of shifted the focus to Brian Kelly. Can we talk about Lane Kiffin? Yeah, let's talk about Lane Kiffin.
I mean, by the way, our boy Pate put the Brian Kelly thing out there because people started shitting on him. 40 wins in 3 seasons. I mean, like,
well, the problem is like Notre Dame fans, like, guys, we can't just straight up say no. We're not putting him in the top of coaches in the top 10. I think it was top 10, right?
It was top 10. I mean, Joe, here's I put it down. 1, 2, 3, 4. He's 6th in wins. And that's
he's a top 10 coach. Like, as much as it pains me to admit, he's a top 10 coach in the sport.